I'll create an inspirational military story following the narrative blueprint you've provided, with the SEAL Chief and Barrett 50 theme. You seriously think you can handle a Barrett 50? That thing weighs more than you do, sweetheart. The gruff voice of Master Sergeant Rodriguez echoed across the advanced marksmanship qualification range at Camp Pendleton. The crowd of Marines gathered for the long-range shooting demonstration chuckled nervously, their eyes shifting between Rodriguez and the slight figure standing beside the massive anti-material rifle. She said nothing, her weathered hands simply continuing their methodical inspection of the weapon's bolt assembly. But when Colonel Mitchell stepped out of the observation tower and saw the way she positioned her body behind the rifle, that specific stance, that particular grip on the bipod legs, his blood ran cold with recognition. If you believe that true warriors prove themselves through actions, not words, type silence below. The morning sun cast long shadows across the California desert as Private First Class Sarah Chun continued her pre-shot routine, ignoring the murmurs from the assembled Marines. Rodriguez, a 20-year veteran instructor who'd seen thousands of shooters come through his range, wasn't finished with his assessment. Look, I get it. Everyone wants to try the big gun. But this isn't some video game. The Barrett M82A1 has a recoil that'll dislocate your shoulder if you don't know what you're doing. Why don't you start with something more manageable? Maybe a nice M24? His tone dripped with the kind of patronizing concern reserved for those he deemed unqualified. Chin's only response was to smoothly rack the bolt, the metallic click cutting through the desert air like a judge's gavel. She inserted a single 50 BMG round into the chamber with the kind of fluid precision that comes from countless repetitions. The other Marines exchanged glances. There was something unsettling about her complete lack of reaction to Rodriguez's provocation. Colonel Mitchell had descended from the observation tower now, his pace quickening as he noticed more details. The worn Pelican case with no unit markings, the specific way she'd modified her shooting position to account for the crosswind, the barely visible tattoo on her forearm that looked suspiciously like the outline of a trident. The demonstration was supposed to be routine, a chance for infantry Marines to observe long-range shooting techniques before their upcoming deployment. The target, a standard steel silhouette, stood at 1,000 yards, an impressive distance for most shooters, but well within the Barrett's effective range. Rodriguez continued his commentary for the benefit of the observers, explaining how the Barrett's massive rounds could punch through engine blocks and light armor. Now watch carefully, he announced. I'll demonstrate the proper shooting position before we pack this beast up, but Chun had already settled behind the rifle, her breathing slowing to an almost imperceptible rhythm. Through her scope, she wasn't looking at the 1,000-yard target. Her elevation adjustments went far beyond what anyone would need for that distance. Private, what the hell do you think you're? Rodriguez's protest died in his throat as Chin calmly announced. Engaging target at 3,600 meters, the crowd erupted in confused laughter. 3,600 meters was over 2 miles, well beyond the official maximum effective range of the Barrett, beyond what most people believe possible with any shoulder-fired weapon. Rodriguez's face flushed red with embarrassment and anger. That's enough. Step away from the weapon. This is an amateur hour, and I won't have someone hurt themselves or others with this Hollywood nonsense. But Colonel Mitchell raised his hand, his voice cutting through the chaos with quiet authority. Let her shoot, Sergeant. There was something in the colonel's tone that made everyone freeze. Chin had already made her final adjustments, factoring in the Coriolis effect, the 7-second flight time of the bullet, the ambient temperature's effect on air density, and the 14 miles per hour crosswind that would push the massive projectile nearly 40 feet off course if not properly compensated for. The silence that followed her trigger pull seemed to last forever. The Barrett's thunderous report rolled across the desert like distant artillery, but Chun was already breaking down the rifle before the bullet found its mark. 7 seconds later, the spotting scope operator's voice cracked over the radio, high and incredulous. Hit. Center mass. Confirmed hit on the bonus target. The bonus target was something Rodriguez had set up as a joke weeks ago. A small steel plate placed at the surveyed distance of 3,600 meters, supposedly impossible to hit with anything short of guided munitions. No one had even attempted it. The range fell into complete, stunned silence. Rodriguez's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, his face cycling through disbelief, confusion, and finally, a dawning horror as he realized the magnitude of his miscalculation. Colonel Mitchell was already at the range computer, pulling up the shot data that would confirm what he suspected: the wind calls, the elevation adjustments, the mathematical precision required for such a shot could only come from someone with very specific training. The other Marines stood frozen, trying to process what they'd just witnessed. Mitchell's fingers flew across the keyboard, accessing a secured personnel database through his command authorization. When Chin's real service record populated the screen, he had to sit down. Chief Petty Officer Sarah Chun, he read aloud, his voice carrying across the silent range. Navy SEAL Team 6, Development Group. Operational 2008 to present. Sniper/breacher. Confirmed kills, classified. Actual number exceeds database parameters. Silver Star, Bronze Star with Valor, for Purple Hearts. Current assignment, classified. Security clearance, TS/SCI. He paused, scrolling through the redacted mission reports. Operation Neptune Spear, Operation Kayla Mueller, Operation Inherent Resolve, High-Value Target Elimination Specialist. Rodriguez had gone pale, his instructor's arrogance evaporating like morning dew under the desert sun. But Mitchell wasn't finished. Previous world record for longest confirmed kill, 3,540 meters, achieved in Afghanistan, 2019. Weapon system, Barrett M82A1. Shooter, S. Chun. Record classification removed for this demonstration by SOCOM authority. The colonel stood slowly, turned to face Chun, and rendered a crisp salute that would have made a drill instructor proud. The transformation was immediate and complete. Every Marine present snapped to attention, their previous amusement replaced by something approaching awe. Chun finished securing the Barrett in its case before returning the salute with the same economy of movement she'd shown throughout the morning. Chief Chun, Mitchell said, loud enough for everyone to hear, I believe you're here for the advanced sniper instructor evaluation, not as a student. She nodded once. Yes, sir. SOCOM wanted an independent assessment of the new curriculum. They felt someone without unit patches might get a more honest picture. Rodriguez looked like he might be physically ill. His attempt at an apology came out as a strangled whisper, but Chin cut him off with a slight gesture. No need, Sergeant. You were protecting your range and your students. That's what a good instructor does. Her words were generous, but everyone present understood the lesson being delivered. Rodriguez would later describe it as the most humbling moment of his career and the most important. Within hours, the story had spread through Camp Pendleton like wildfire, growing with each retelling. By evening, it had reached every Marine base on the West Coast. The impact was immediate and profound. Rodriguez reorganized his entire teaching methodology, implementing a new policy where every student would be evaluated solely on their performance, never their appearance. He kept a photo from that day on his desk, Chin behind the Barrett, the sun creating a halo effect around her small frame dwarfing the massive rifle. It served as a daily reminder that warriors come in all forms. More importantly, the advanced sniper course saw a 40% increase in female applicants over the next quarter, with Chin's shot becoming known as the 3,600-meter lesson. But the real change came in the quiet moments. Young Marines, especially women who'd been told they were too small, too weak, or too anything to pursue combat roles, would seek out the spot where Chun had taken the shot. They'd stand there, looking out at the distant mountains, understanding that someone who looked like them had just shattered not just a record, but a ceiling. Chin completed her evaluation over the following weeks, working with each instructor, never mentioning her background unless directly asked. Her report to SOCOM would eventually transform how special operations sniper training was conducted across all branches. Months later, a congressional delegation visited Camp Pendleton for a capabilities demonstration. Rodriguez, now the lead instructor for advanced marksmanship, was showing them around the range when one of the senators noticed a small plaque embedded in the concrete at one of the shooting positions. It read simply, Chun Point, 3,600 meters. Silence speaks loudest, the senator asked about it, and Rodriguez smiled, beginning to tell the story that had become legend. You see, Senator, we had this chief petty officer come through, and we all learned something important that day. Real operators don't announce themselves with words or patches or boasting. They announce themselves with capability, with precision, with results that speak so loudly that words become unnecessary. The senator nodded, but Rodriguez wasn't finished. He pointed to a group of young Marines practicing at the far end of the range, several of them women who wouldn't have been there before Chen's visit. Her shot traveled 3,600 meters that day, he said, but her impact? That's still traveling. Every round fired from this range now carries a piece of that lesson. That respect isn't given based on what someone looks like, but on what they can do. And sometimes, the most dangerous person in the room is the quiet one that everyone underestimates. The story of Chief Chen's shot became required reading at sniper schools across the military. Not the technical aspects, though those were studied exhaustively, but the human element. The lesson that assumptions are the enemy of excellence, that prejudice blinds us to potential, and that true professionals don't need to announce their expertise because their actions create their reputation. Years later, when Chen finally retired from active duty, she was invited back to Camp Pendleton for the dedication of the Sarah Chun Marksmanship Excellence Center. Rodriguez, now a sergeant major, was there to greet her. This time, his salute came first, accompanied by words he'd waited years to say. "Chief, I've trained thousands of Marines, but you taught me the most important lesson of my career. That silence isn't weakness. It's the sound of competence so complete it needs no introduction." Chen's response was characteristic, a slight nod, a half-smile, and then she got to work, spending the day coaching young shooters, her hands steadying their rifles, her quiet voice carrying the weight of experience that no amount of shouting could match. Because true legacy isn't written in words or measured in meters. It's measured in the lives changed, the barriers broken, and the assumptions shattered. Like a perfectly placed shot that travels through time, affecting everything in its path, Chen's 3,600-meter lesson continues to resonate, reminding us that the most powerful statement is often made in silence. For more stories where quiet competence triumphs over loud ignorance, and where actions define worth, subscribe to Unknown Heroine Stories.